In this lesson, we will get to know what is identity domain and its core capabilities. So let's get started. First, let us look at what is identity domain. An identity domain simply represents user population in OCI and their associated configurations and security settings. It is like a self-contained identity and access management service that can be used to handle or address various IAM use cases, where each domain is like a container for managing users, roles, federation, and provisioning users from other directories. It also provides secure application integration through SSO, that is single sign-on, and secure authentication using SAML and OAuth protocols. Now, as you can see in the graphics here, within the identity and access management service, we have this concept of identity domain, which is like a container, or you can think of it as a metadata that allows you to easily manage users, groups, dynamic groups, and also allow you to secure applications using OAuth, federation, and then allow you to enable multi-factor authentication and configure adaptive security. With identity domain, you can configure user provisioning and import users from Active Directory using the AD bridge component, or from any other directory using the provisioning bridge. It also allows you to configure PAM and Radius proxy application from an identity domain. And also you can configure app gateways for applications that do not support OAuth and SAML protocol. And if you notice that an identity domain is a resource in OCI. Therefore, like any other resource, you can write policies for it and scope your domain to a particular compartment. Now let us look at few use cases for identity domain. Like suppose you might create an identity domain to manage employee access across your cloud and on-premises applications. That will help you to simplify authentication and authorization for various applications. Next, suppose you want another identity domain to provide access to supply chain and ordering system for business partners. So this isolated domain can have its own set of user population, authentication, and access policies. And now suppose you go ahead and create third identity domain to manage consumer identities and their access to public-facing applications. This allows you to have separate domain for consumer users and configure authentication settings for such end users accessing your public-facing application. Next, identity domain also offers identity store and lifecycle management, where you can onboard users from your console, API, or CLI interface, along with the features such as self-service registration or automated account provisioning, and it also allows you to synchronize accounts across your cloud and on-premises applications. And as I said, you can use directory integrations. If you prefer to manage users from an external identity source, for example, Microsoft Active Directory, IAM can synchronize your users, groups between external directory and from your identity domain. It also supports the delegated authentication between the AD and IAM. Along with that, you can add applications to your identity domain from the application catalog, which has around 400 plus pre-configured templates for many popular applications. You can also add applications using standard protocols such as SAML or OpenID Connect, or using our proxy gateways and bridges that extend to SaaS, PaaS, or any enterprise application, whether it is on premises or hosted in the cloud. Then on top of that, to increase the secure access to the applications and OCI resources, you can enable controls such as single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and adaptive security. For example, you can use various MFA methods to enable stronger identity verification, such as emails or mobile application passcodes, security questions for passwords alone, or even you can go passwordless. Now, after knowing the features of the identity domain, let us see the core capabilities of OCI IAM with identity domains. We have four key capabilities of OCI IAM. That is the inbound authentication and SSO, the identity store and lifecycle management, then the outbound authentication and the SSO, and then OCI authorization using access policies. Now let us go ahead and take a look at each of them, starting with inbound authentication and SSO. This capability is all about how users are authenticated into the service. So it offers various methods including social logon and the federated logons for the organizations that want to leverage the Active Directory without moving the AD credentials into the cloud service. It also supports delegated authentication between the AD and IAM using AD bridge component. Then on top of that, to increase secure access to the resources and applications, you can enable multi-factor authentication and the adaptive security. Now moving to the second core functionality, that is identity store and lifecycle management. This is all about how you manage bringing or onboarding the users from different systems to the OCI IAM. It has several features to do that. One is using bridges like AD bridge and provisioning bridge, or you can also use console, CLI or API options for onboarding users. And then we also have this application catalog where you can use several applications listed over there. Using all these functionalities, you can manage user roles, group membership, assigning permissions, provisioning and deprovisioning of the account, automating the synchronization, and setting up the security policies. And then we have the outbound authentication and SSO. After we know who the user is and what permissions they have, we can enable single sign-on to the target application. So the target application here can be your SaaS application, or it can be your enterprise application, or your Linux host, or it can be your VPN client as well. And the last capability, using IAM policies, you can manage access to OCI resources like compute, storage, or networking. So this last capability is all about managing authorization using IAM policy component. So to summarize, we have seen four core capabilities of OCI IAM: inbound authentication, outbound authentication, identity lifecycle management, access policy control, and the protocols that IAM supports. So basically now you got to know identity domain is a logical container that allows you to manage users, roles, security settings, and application integrations. And this isolated domain environment allows you to have different configurations for authentication, access policies, and security settings to match the unique needs of different projects, teams, and business units. So I hope you got to know the core concept of identity domain. Thanks for your time. See you again. Hello and welcome back. In this lesson, we will have a very high-level understanding of identity domain types and the features and limits associated with each domain type. So before we start, I will request you to refer the official documentation for more and latest information on what is included in each domain and what are the related limits of each domain type. So let's start with the free domain type. So now when you create an OCI account, it includes an identity domain by default. It is called a default identity domain, and this allows customer to manage access to all OCI resources. So if you do not want to create anything additional or do not need any integration of applications, you can always use the free default identity domain type. It supports various authentication methods, but there is a limit of 2000 users. So this type is not suitable for setting up enterprise level workforce access management. Moving on to the Oracle apps. This type is actually tied up with a few of the Oracle Service Teams. For example, if you purchase any of the Oracle SaaS, PaaS or GBU application or the VBCS, then this domain type come tied up with those services. So this is something the customer cannot select or create on the console, as this type is associated with the service teams. But you can select on console Oracle App Premium that supports hybrid IAM scenarios including proxies, gateways and bridges, which extend the IAM service to on-premises or OCI hosted Oracle applications such as Oracle eBusiness, PeopleSoft or database and so on. So basically this domain type is specifically for Oracle applications that allows you to use on-premises environment and manage identities in the cloud. Also you can add non-Oracle applications, but there is a limit of adding only 6 of them. And next, with Premium, you will get all the fully loaded instance with all features and no restrictions. And also limits on number of users, groups or applications are set high to support enterprise level requirements. This type is compatible with hybrid scenarios, so whatever you are running on premises are all supported. So if you want to have Oracle as your identity and access manager provider, then you can set up this identity domain type. And then the final domain type is known as external user. And the idea is to use this for non-employees and consumer use cases. So if you have contractors and you want to give them access, or if you have a consumer application that can scale to large number of users and want to manage their identities, you can use external user domain type. And as you can see, it supports features such as social logon, self-service, password management and so on. And it also supports hybrid features. So to wrap up, as we have discussed, when you provision your account, you get a default identity domain with the free domain type assigned. But if you need additional users or integration of Oracle and non-Oracle applications, you can switch from free domain type to premium or external users based on your specific requirements. And you know there are restrictions associated with each domain type, so please read the official documentation. Thanks for your time. Happy learning. Hello and welcome. My name is Saurabh Patil and I am a senior OCI instructor with OU. In this module on managing OCI IAM identity domain, we will go over how to set up an identity domain along with IAM components like users, groups, compartment and policies. We are going to start by understanding the default domain, which is already available when you create an OCI tenancy. Then we will look at creating additional identity domain. Next, we will see how to create and manage groups as well as dynamic groups. Then, how to onboard users using console and other import options. Following the creation of user and groups, we will look at the role of IAM policies in defining permission and access control. So in this module, we will follow the workflow. First, setting up the identity domain, then creating and adding users to the group, and finally using policies to set permission. This module will help you in setting up the key OCI IAM components. So let's get started. Welcome back to this lesson on default domain. When you create an OCI tenancy, your first identity domain, known as default domain, is created by default. And as we know, an identity domain is a container to store and manage user and their roles, as well as to federate and provision users and keep application integration secure using SSO or protocols like SAML or OAuth. And as you can see, this default domain has been created in the root compartment of your tenancy. And you can use it for any users, groups, or application that you want to create or integrate in the root compartment of your tenancy. There are few important points that you should know about the default domain. First, because it is created with the tenancy setup, you cannot deactivate or delete it. Next, you cannot hide the default domain option from the sign-in page. And it always replicates to all regions to which the tenancy is subscribed. And then in your default domain, you have one user and two groups already created. They are all domain user and administrator groups. Your admin or your super user is a part of administrator group. This group cannot be deleted and it must always contain at least one user. In addition, you will have a policy in your tenancy that gives admin group access to all OCI cloud resources. So this particular policy cannot be updated or deleted. And please make a note that any additional user added to this admin group will have full access to all the OCI services. And then your default admin user is the first IAM user for your tenancy and will be responsible for initially setting up additional administrators to manage your tenancy. And then there are some do's and don'ts for your administrator user, such as assigning roles to manage users, groups, application, system configuration, and security settings. Also need to perform delegated administration by assigning users to different administrative roles and domains like domain administrator or security administrator. Need to enable multi-factor authentication, configure MFA setting, and other authentication factors. Admin user also can create self-registration profiles to manage different set of users and also need to look at approvals of the policies and different application. But you should always avoid adding more users to the admin group or using admin or super user account for managing day-to-day routine tasks. Instead, separate IAM users with appropriate permissions for specific roles and responsibilities should be created and used. And instead of having all the users and group in a root compartment or in this default domain, using multiple identity domain can help you maintain the isolation of the users and administrative control. So to wrap up, it was a quick lesson on default domain and some do's and don'ts related to admin account. In the following lesson, we will see how we can create multiple identity domains in your tenancy. Thanks for your time. See you again. Welcome to this lesson on creating identity domain, where we will discuss why we need to create multiple identity domains if we have default domain, and then followed by a demo to know the process of how to create them. First, we will understand why we need multiple domains, like for isolation of administrative control, where multiple domains allow for isolation of identities, which is important in complex cloud environment. They serve as container, separating different teams or departments and preventing unauthorized access or interference between them. As you can see in this example, we have separate domain for production and development with their own set of users and integrated application associated with domains. And as we all know, different departments may need different access permissions to deal with data or resources. So different set of security policies, access control, and compliance can be applied to each domain separately, ensuring data security and regulatory compliance. Like production domain users will have different set of security settings compared to development domain users. It also simplifies identity management. Like multiple domains provide a structured way to organize and manage our identities, making it easier to oversee and maintain large-scale organization. Think of it as having different folders on your computer desktop to keep your files organized. And with multiple domains, you can go granular for administrative control. Each domain can have its own set of administrators responsible for managing users, application, and security policies. This flexibility is essential for large organization. And then when you create an identity domain, it will create one default administrator group as well as one admin user. That admin is your domain administrator, and that admin can manage users, groups, or applications in your domain, as well as they can assign administrative roles to different users like security admin or application admin for handling application integration, and so on. Also, admin can configure multi-factor authentication setting along with password or signing policies associated with identities. Admin can also create self-registration profiles to manage consumer users or different set of consumer groups. One important point that you should note related to region is that when you create identity domain, the selected region in the console becomes the domain home region. For example, if the selected region in the console is US East Ashburn and you go ahead and create identity domain, then Ashburn region is set as this identity domain's home region. And unlike the default domain, additional domains are not by default replicated to all subscribed region of your tenancy. So if users in this identity domain need to interact with the OCI resources in other regions, you must first enable replication for the domains. So with this quick lesson, we got to know why we need to create multiple identity domains and about admin user that get created along with domain creation. Also, we need to take care of home region while creating domain and enable replication if required. So in the following demo, we will see domain creation process in action. Thanks for your time. See you in the demo. Welcome to the demo of creating an identity domain. Let us consider a use case where we have a subscribed OCI tenancy. By default, we get default domain. Now suppose you need additional domains to manage your production and development teams' identities separately. To do this, we need to start by creating dedicated compartment for each team or domain to ensure isolation. Then we will create identity domains, one for production and one for development, with a domain admin to manage each domain. So let us go to the console and deploy this use case step by step. So the first thing I do here is I log in into my account, and this is my account name. I click next here and it will bring me to the login screen. And if you notice here the identity domain, it is telling me that I am going to log in to a default domain. But once we create additional domains, we can select which domain to log in for managing users, groups, SSO, federation, and advanced IAM capabilities for that domain. For now, I will enter my default domain admin credentials, that is username and password, and click sign in. So now we are on the console. From the main menu, I will click on Identity and Security and then select Domains under Identity. In Domains, you will see Default Domain, which is in active state, where you can manage users, groups, dynamic groups, application, or in security, you can manage sign-in policy, MFA, or adaptive security and more advanced IAM capabilities. We'll cover them in detail in upcoming lessons. For now, we will focus on creating identity domains. So as per our use case, we need dedicated compartment for both domains. So let's start by creating production compartment. So I go back to compartments, click create compartment, provide the name as production, add some information and click create compartment. I will also quickly create development compartment. Create compartment, development, and click create compartment. Now we have two compartments, production and development. Now let's go back to domain to create an identity domain. First we need to select the compartment where our domain will be placed. That is production in this case, and click create domain. Provide domain name, that is production or production team. Select the domain type as free for now, and you can change it later according to your requirement. Next, create a domain admin by providing name and required email address. Then confirm the compartment and click create domain. It will take few seconds and domain will be created. Similarly, we can create development domain. Once the domains are active, you will receive an email to configure password for domain admin. For that, open your provided mailbox and click activate account. Then it will ask you to set a password for domain admin, like production identity domain in this case. This password policy that you see here can be configured as per your requirement. We will see how to configure password policy and impose them on identities in upcoming lesson. For now, just set a password. Click reset password. Once done, click on continue sign in. Now you need to re-log in using updated password. Select your domain and enter username and password and click sign in. First time it will take you to the profile page where you can update your profile information, or you can skip this step and access OCI console from the profile menu by clicking OCI console. As per the default sign-in policy, you need to enable secure verification method for your account. So click enable secure verification, and for this demo, I will set up mobile app as second factor. You can also configure other methods by referring to documentation. For mobile app, you need to download Mobile Authenticator and scan the QR code. Once that is done, your device becomes the second factor for authentication. I have already installed Mobile Authenticator on my device, and I will scan the QR code and it will add my device as a second method for authentication. So now every time you log in, you need to enter the passcode or allow login from the mobile app as a second authentication factor. And then you will be on the console. And if you check the login user is the domain admin for production admin domain. You can also verify it from domain admin group. Go to identity and security, domains, select production as your current domain, go to groups, and you can see under domain administrator group you have your username. Similarly, we can configure development domain admin. So that was a quick demo on creating identity domain, where we got to know how to create an identity domain with a domain admin. I hope you found this demo useful. Thanks for your time. Welcome to this lesson on managing groups, where we will discuss groups as an IAM component, why we need them, and also about default groups in your domain, followed by a demo of how to create them. So group as an IAM component are collection of users who have common roles, permissions, and access policy. Like we have network admin group for users responsible for managing network in your tenancy. Similarly, we can create groups for users handling instances or certificate management. It also helps us to simplify the management of access to resources. By allowing you to grant permissions to a group of users, instead of individual user. And also group make it easier to track and audit who has access to specific resources, which is required for security and compliance purposes, where you can see which group have access to resources, making it easier to identify potential security risk. Now let's see how to leverage groups in your domain. After creating an identity domain, we have domain admin who can create groups aligned to your organization structure and access requirement. For example, we can have group like engineering, marketing, or finance. Then once these groups are in place, the domain admin can add users to these groups as per their roles. This ensures that users with similar responsibilities are grouped together. And then we can set permissions using policies. Like we can define what users in each group can do. Well, we will learn more about policies and users in upcoming lesson. For now, let us focus on groups. So we can create groups as per our requirements. But by default, we have two groups created by IAM in each domain. They are all domain users and domain administrators. Talking about domain administrator, during domain creation, if you create an admin user for identity domain, that admin is added to domain administrator group. This group cannot be deleted and we need at least one user in this group. And also be careful because any user added to this group will have full control over the capabilities of that identity domain. Next we have all identity domain. This group is automatically assigned when a new user is created and it does not appear in the groups tab. All newly created users are by default part of this group. So if you assign this group to any of your application, all users in this group can access those applications. So make a note of it. Since this group is created by IAM and not by the administrator, you cannot delete it. Beyond these default groups, you can create additional groups as required. Now let's dive into a demo on how to create groups in the console. So see you in a demo. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the demo on creating groups. We will continue with the same use case where we created two identity domains, production and development. Now we will create two groups in production domain, one called network admin for users managing networks and vault admin for those handling keys in the OCI tenancy. So let's go to the console and see this in action. I'll first enter my tenancy name and then I will select the domain production. And then I will enter my production domain admin credentials and click sign in. Now we are on the console. We can confirm our login from the profile and then I will go to the main menu, identity and security and click domains. As you can see, you are a domain admin for production domain. So you do not have access to default domain. Even you do not have access to read compartments as we have not set any permission for this particular user till now. So as a production domain admin, you can only access the capabilities of production domain. So I select your domain and to create groups, we go to groups and you can see default groups are already available as we have discussed in theory lesson. Now you can click create group and then enter the name network admin. For now we are not adding any users to this particular group, but you have an option to add existing users to the group while creating it. Now click create group and done. The group is now created. I'll quickly create one more group, vault admin. Click create group and done. And so we have created two groups as per our use case. Moving ahead with the same use case, we will see how to add users and set permissions for those groups in upcoming demos. So this was a quick demo where you got to know how to create groups. And remember, it is a good practice to create a group first as per the roles in your organization and then add users to the group. Thanks for your time and see you in the next lesson. Hello and welcome to this lesson on managing users in OCI IAM. Here we will dive into the different stages of user lifecycle and understand who can manage users and explore various methods for onboarding users. So let's get started. First we need to understand the user lifecycle, starting with non-existent stage, where user profile is not yet created. Now consider that HR in your organization want a user profile for new hire. So you go ahead and create user account and move that user to activated stage. You can also create a user and keep that particular user in a deactivated stage if the joining date is of later dates. Once the user is in the activated stage, they have active access to OCI resources and application based on their associated permissions. In this phase, you can modify user permissions or change their assigned group. Suppose a particular user job role has been changed. Or you can also assign or remove the admin role privileges for that particular user. And if a particular user goes on sabbatical leave, or if you want to restrict the access to the OCI resources for a certain period of time, so we can move that particular user to deactivated stage. User in the deactivated stage cannot sign in or use OCI resources. You always have an option to reactivate the account to get their access back. Now consider a scenario where user retires or leaves the company. In this case, the user account is deleted and all groups, application and admin role privileges associated with their account are revoked as a part of the workflow. So now you got to know the life cycle of the user. Now we will go ahead and see who can manage or create users. First is your tenancy admin, who has permission to manage all the resources in your tenancy. So he can manage users, groups, and all related identity components in your tenancy. Second is your domain admin, who is a part of domain admin group and can manage all the capabilities of that particular domain, including users and groups. Then domain admin can also assign administrator roles to a particular user, such as user manager admin role. Now this user can also manage users and groups within that domain, and we will see this in more detail. And the last one, you can assign permission to any user using policies. So the user who has permission to manage users can create them. Like for example, policy admin assign user and group management permission by writing policy like allow group and the group name to manage users in tenancy. For now, don't worry about the policy syntax and how we write the policy. We will learn and explore more about writing policies and syntax in upcoming lessons. For now, you can just understand it as a policy that allow any user who is a part of this particular group to have permission to manage users in entire tenancy. So you got to know who can create or manage users in your tenancy or in a particular domain. Now we will see how you can onboard users. So we have several ways to onboard users to OCI IAM. You can quickly create users using OCI console or API option. And if you are dealing with large number of users and groups, then you can use CSV import option in the console. And for the use case where you need self-service capabilities for consumer users, you can use IAM self-registration option. But what if I want to bring the users from external sources? You can bring them to IAM using automation in several ways, depending on the use case. You can use methods like app catalog to bring users from the applications like Oracle SCM, that is Human Capital Management, or Oracle Unified Directory, and Oracle Internet Directory. Or you can use SCIM APIs or cross-domain identity management and user lifecycle. Additionally, IAM provides the Active Directory Bridge and Provisioning Bridge software component that customer can install locally on-prem to sync and provision users to OCI IAM. And to import users as a part of federation, you can use just-in-time provisioning. So to wrap up, in this lesson we covered the different stages of user lifecycle and then who can create or manage users and the various methods available for onboarding users. In the next lesson, we have a demo to see some of these methods in action. Thanks for your time. See you again. Welcome back. In this demo on creating users in OCI IAM, we will use the same use case where we have two domains, production and development, within our tenancy. Then in the production domain, we created two groups, network admin and vault admin. Now in this demo, we will create three users, one using console and adding it to the network admin group, and two more users using the CSV import option and adding one of them to network admin group and the second user to vault admin group. So let us go to the console and see this in action. Now I am logged in as production domain admin user, which means I have permission to access resources or capabilities within the production domain. So I can create users, groups, manage application or do the security configuration within production domain only. But if you log in as tenancy admin, then you can create users in any domain, including the default domain. Now let's navigate to the main menu, click Identity and Security, and under Identity click Domains. Now select your production domain and click Users. And to create user, we will click on Create User and provide the name Saurabh Patil. Set the username as S. Patil and provide an email address. The domain admin set the requirement of email address in domain setting. If the primary email address required checkbox is selected, we must provide email ID. Otherwise, we can skip this. For now, it has been selected, so I need to provide the email address while creating the users. And then I will assign the user to the network admin group and click Create. Done. The user is now created and the activation link will be sent to the provided email address, where user can go to their mailbox and activate the account. For now, I will do it for that particular user. I open the mailbox and click Activate the account and set the password. I will do that quickly. Then I'll click on Reset. Then we have activated the account and updated the password. Now you can open new window and go to the sign-in page, cloud.oracle.com. Enter your tenancy name, select the production domain, and provide the username and password for the user that we just created. That is S. Patil and the password. And then click on Sign In. For first time, it will ask me to set up second factor or multi-factor authentication. I will do that quickly and done. We are on the console. The user Saurabh Patil is logged in, but that user does not have access to any of the cloud resources or services, as we have not defined any permissions yet. But the user can manage their profile and perform self-service capabilities like updating their profile, resetting password, or setting email preferences. Now, let us explore how we can use CSV option to create multiple or bulk users in IAM. For that, I log out from the current user and log in as production domain admin. Once again, I will navigate to domains, select the production domain and click users. And this time I will not click on create user, I will select more actions and click import users. First you need to download a sample file to create your own CSV for import process. After downloading, open the file and edit users.csv. First, delete all demo data and then add the information for the users you want to create. To save some time on the demo, I have already created users.csv file, highlighting minimum required fields like user ID, last and first name, work and home email, and primary email type. Note that for the primary email type, valid values are home, work, and others. If you enter any other value, there will be an error and the input will not be successful. You can refer the documentation for more details. Save the file, go to the console and select your user.csv file and then click import. You can check the status of user creation by clicking on the job ID. If the creation fails, you will receive the information on why the import did not succeed. In our case, users are created successfully. Now go to the production domain and click users and you will see all the imported users. You can add them to the network admin and vault group as per our use case. For that, go to groups, select the network admin group and select the user and click assign users to group. Go back, select the vault admin group, select the second user and click assign user to group. Users can now log in with the new credentials and configure multi-factor authentication just like we did for the previous user. So to wrap up, in this demo, we have seen the process of creating users using console and CSV import option. This option is important when we want to create or import bulk users to the OCI IAM. And also we have seen how to add users to the groups. Thanks for your time. See you again. Welcome to this lesson on understanding administrator roles in OCI IAM, where we will explore why administrator roles are important and the permissions associated with each role within your identity domain. So let's get started. As we know, when we create an identity domain, along with that, we also create a domain admin. This domain admin is a super user for your domain and also has all super user privileges, which means they can manage users, groups, application, system configuration, or security setting. and also actions related to audit and notification. And as a domain admin, you might want to share some of this responsibility with other users within your domain, like sharing user management permissions to a particular user for managing user related capabilities in your domain, or assign someone as security admin to handle all security configurations for your domain. Now this is where we see the need of administrator roles, so that domain admin can do the delegation of admin roles to other users. And to address the same, now the OCI identity domain has predefined administrator roles, and it allows domain admin to assign specific role to other users. And as mentioned, these roles are predefined and come with a broad set of permissions for managing the identity domain and its components without the need to write any complex policy statement. Now let us quickly look at the available administrator roles and their associated permissions. Starting with Identity Domain Administrator. This role is for super user with access to all capabilities of that particular domain and responsible for delegation of roles to other users. Second, we have Security Administrator role. This role can manage system settings or security configurations and also manage password policies or sign-in policies. They can also handle authentication, multi-factor authentication, and identity providers in your domain. Then the Application Administrator role allows you to create, update, and manage applications, as well as it allows you to provide or revoke access for groups and users for any particular application. Then we have a role for User Management, where user administrator are responsible for managing users, groups, and their memberships in your domain, like creating, deleting users and groups and all related capabilities in your domain. We also have User Manager, who has limited permissions as compared to User Administrator role. You can assign them to manage all users or users from specific group, and they can handle various user related capabilities including account updates, activations, deactivations, password resets, and more. Then we have a role for user support, where help desk administrator can manage user accounts, unlock them, and handle actions related to password reset, authentication factors, and bypass code. Following that, we have audit role for generating or running reports for an identity domain and to keep a track of various activities. All these predefined roles apply to the users within that particular domain and provides granular access to applications and data planes integrated within the domain. They do not extend to the compartments, which makes them different from policy access management. Now we will see some key points of utilizing administrator roles. With all predefined roles and well-defined permission, it is easy to manage your identity domain. All the roles are associated with the capabilities of your identity domain only. This linkage ensures that all the roles are relevant and specific to the context of your organization. One of the key benefits of administrative role is that they help you to simplify the delegation of tasks. Instead of navigating complex policies, you can assign roles to users, allowing them to perform specific duties without the need of understanding in-depth complex policy management. And finally, all the roles are aligned with best practices in cloud security, making your IAM more secure and efficient. So to conclude, administrative roles are effective method for managing and delegation of responsibilities within your domain. And it simplifies the access management, and most important, it is aligned with the best practices in the cloud security. I hope you found this feature useful. Thanks for your time and see you in the demo. Welcome to the demo on assigning administrator roles. I have logged in as one of the users we created in previous demo, and you will notice that this particular user do not have access to any cloud services or resources. Like if you can check VCN under networking, see authorization failed, means you do not have permission to perform any action. Same for compute instance. You do not have permissions. And you can also check with any other service, like I will select Vault. See, no access. Even the user do not have access to the capabilities within the identity domain. We can check that by navigating to domains, selecting production domain, and click on users. See, you are not allowed to perform any action. You can check with groups, same. Even you can check with security, you do not have any permissions. Now let's see what happens when we assign this user an administrator role. Like we will assign user administrator role. For that, I log out from this user and log in as domain admin. Select production domain, provide username and password, and click sign in. Now I go to domains, select production domain, and to assign roles, I need to go to security and click administrators. Here you can select the role you want to assign. In our case, I will select user administrator role. This role allows you to manage users, group and group membership within that domain. Click add user. Now select the user you want to be user admin and then click add user. Done. We have assigned Saurabh Patil as user administrator for production domain, who can create or delete users or groups and also assign or revoke group memberships. Now let us verify the changes. I go back to the user console to check the access. I go to the domains, under production domain, click on users, and you will notice that user got access to manage users within the domain and also groups and their membership. However, users still do not have access to other capabilities like security or notification. As we have only assigned user administrator role, only related permissions are given. That means user with this particular role as a user admin can manage users, groups and group memberships only. Similarly, we can assign or delegate admin roles to other users easily using this functionality without writing any single policy statement. But make a note, all the roles are limited to domains and the capabilities of domains only. So with this quick demo, we got to know how to delegate administrator roles in the identity domains. Also, we assigned user admin role to a particular user and then verified the access permission. Thanks for watching. See you again. Welcome to this lesson on policies. In this lesson, we will learn how policies are used to manage permissions and authorization in OCI, where authorization gives granular permission to end users to access resources or services in OCI. It also controls things like what kind of permission a particular user has. And as a part of authorization, we write or set policies in OCI to provide role-based access control. Let's start by looking at how to write a policy. The syntax for writing a policy in OCI is shown on the screen. A policy has 4 key aspects. First, subject, that defines who is to be allowed. And then we have action for defining what action a subject can perform on resources. And with placement and location, we define scope of access for that particular subject. And to go more granular, we can use condition. Before going further, make a note that by default, everything is denied. Policies are designed to always start by allowing something. And there is no such thing as deny policy. As we follow the security principle of least privilege, which means that we only provide the minimum needed permission for an end user to perform their task. Always keep this in mind while writing policies. Now let's decode the policy syntax shown on the screen. First we will start with subject clause. The subject clause is providing access to your principal actor. You can define subject in various ways, and we can start with the membership of registered groups inside domain. Like we know, group is a collection of users where we group users as per their roles or as per the company needs. So while we write a policy for group membership, we first write group as keyword, then give the domain name to which that group belongs, and then we write the group name. Let's take an example. Suppose you want to write a policy for network admin group in your production domain. Then the policy will look like what you see on the screen. For now, just focus on subject, where the group keyword is used and then domain name / group name. In similar way, you can write it for dynamic group. And dynamic group is basically used when you want to call a particular service from another service. For example, you want to allow group of compute instances to call object storage or vault service. So the policy will look like allow dynamic group and then the domain name / dynamic group name. You are not limited to go with the names only. You can use OSID as it is a unique identifier where you have to just replace the group name and dynamic name with OSID. You can also use a subject clause with something like any user, which means anybody who is a part of that tenancy can actually do something. And again, there are use cases where you want to use a subject like that. And if you have more than one group with the same set of permissions, you do not have to write multiple policies. You can change them like you see in this example, group domain name /a-admin, domain name /b-admin, and so on. This way a single policy gets applied to multiple groups. One important point you should note is that when you do not prefix a domain name while writing the policy as shown in the following example, then the default domain is implied. So you should always make a practice to prefix a domain name in a policy statement. Even if you are writing a policy for groups in default domain, you should prefix the default to the group name to make the policy statement more readable as shown on the screen. Now let us quickly look at action clause. Now in the action clause, basically we want to give you granular permissions. And behind the scene, these actions or permissions are nothing but API operations. But it becomes very difficult if we ask you to write a policy at every API operation level. So what we do is we group or bundle them into verb and resource pair. And using this way, it becomes a plain English kind of syntax, which make it much easier to manage and also much easier to understand. So what are the different level of verbs available? Well, it is inspect, read, use, and manage. And as you go down the hierarchy, the access level increases. And as you can see here in the description, for inspect, you can basically observe and monitor and do nothing beyond that. Where read means you have basic access, but not all the capabilities of that particular resource. Use means you can use the permission to modify the pre-existing resources. And with manage, you can basically do anything on the resource. Now let's see some permission examples to relate verbs in policy. If I have to give an example, when you say inspect object, you can learn about objects stored in buckets or detail about the object stored in bucket, like quantity or like if object exists or not, etc., etc., without getting the access to the object itself. But when you write a verb like read object, you are reading the content of the object. And when you say something like re-encrypt object, so you want to basically encrypt the object using different key version. So this is an example of use verb keyword where we are performing some action on the pre-existing resources. And when you say create object, of course you are creating an object or deleting object, etc., etc. So in this case we use manage verb to assign create permission. So these are the 4 different verb levels available, and they are consistent across all the resources within OCI. So what we have done, we have bundled all these permissions behind the scenes to give you the easy to understand and easy to syntax format. Now let's look at the second part of this action clause, which is basically the resource type. So what are resources? Well, again, to keep things simple, everything in OCI are resources. So if you say something like all resources, you are indicating that you are giving access to every resource within OCI. So you do not have to worry about new service getting added or missing out a particular service or some features. You just have to write all -resources, and all the resources in OCI are covered under it. This is the highest level of resource type available in OCI for permission management. And then we have this aggregate resource type and individual resource type. The idea here is each resource type is grouped into a family. Like compute has many features and capabilities, and storage has many features and components, and database, and so on. So instead of dealing with this individual resource type, you can deal with them at aggregate level. So if you say database family, you can actually write a policy at this particular level. And if you are not comfortable with aggregate or giving the permission to all the capabilities of that particular service, what you can do, you can go granular and select that particular individual resource type. Like for example, you can go ahead and say manage DB nodes, or you can say use databases. So you can go granular and select that particular individual resource type. You can see the same with instance family, object family, or volume family. But important thing to keep in the mind is that some resource type do not have an aggregate resource type. For example, identity resource itself. It does not have an aggregate resource type. So when you are dealing with identity, you have to write a policy on individual resource type. Let me quickly jump to the documentation and show you this in more detail. So in the OCI documentation page here, if you look at the core services, if I click networking, you can see there is an aggregate resource type available, which is virtual network family. But if you want to go granular, you can write policies at individual resource type. So like manage VCN or use subnet, or you can say read VCN. So you can go and use the individual resource type instead of going and using the aggregate level. By doing this, you are not giving a permission to all the components of that particular resource, but only the specific component. Similarly, if you go down and see for compute, you have aggregate resource type and the individual resource type available. And down below, if you click on block volume, you have the same structure. Same with databases. If you click and see, you have the same aggregate and individual resource type available. Now, the one that I want to show you is identity. When you look at identity, there is no aggregate resource type. So if you are dealing with identity and you want to write some policies against the identity component, you have to write policies at individual resource types. So keep that in mind, because it will be useful when you create admin and you want to give them permission, suppose to write policies or to create compartment or to manage users and group. So you need to give them permission at individual resource type level, because there is no aggregate resource type available for identity resource. Now coming back to our third component of the syntax, that is placement or location. So placement basically means where you are allowing your subject to perform actions. You can allow them to perform action in entire tenancy by saying in tenancy, or you can scope it down to a particular compartment. For compartment, you have two options. You can define compartment with name by saying in compartment and the name of the compartment, or you can use the OCID of the compartment by saying in compartment ID space the OCID of the compartment. So this is a structure how you can define the placement or location. Now let's see the example here where we are allowing our subject, that is network admin, to manage virtual family network in compartment sandbox. So we have scoped their permissions to a particular compartment sandbox. Similarly, you can give the compartment OSID by saying compartment ID and the OSID of the compartment. So in this way, we can use the placement to scope the assigned permission. So to wrap up, I hope you got to know how authorization and access control is done in OCI using policies. We now know the policy syntax, and in the syntax we have subject clause to whom we assign permissions, and then we have action clause where we define verb and resource type to define the resource access, and then we have placement to scope the assigned permission. Also, we have seen the documentation to understand the aggregate resource type for some resources. So this lesson gave you an overall idea about authorization or permission management in OCI. Thanks for your time and happy learning. Welcome back. As we saw in the theory lesson, the permission or authorization is done through policies that define what someone is allowed to do in OCI. In this particular demo, we will see how to write policies and provide access to the resources in OCI. Now we are on the console, and for this demo, I have logged in as a tenancy admin, not as a domain admin, as we need to write policy statements. And we saw earlier, we have this default domain which get created when you create an OCI account. And we created another identity domain called production. If you click on it, we see that we have also created users and added them to the groups called network admin and vault admin. If you click on network admin group, you can see the users that belongs to this group. Now suppose we want the users in this group should be able to manage virtual cloud network in OCI. But now they cannot access that service as we have not set any permissions or written any policy statement to provide access to the VCN service. I'll quickly show you that. So I will log in as one of the user and show you the access permission. Open a new window. Enter the tenancy name. Now select the production domain and provide the username and password. Click on sign in, and now you can see I have logged in as John Rose in the identity domain production. Now if I go to networking and click on virtual cloud network and select the compartment, for now I can only see the root compartment, and it gives me an error saying authorization failed. That is, I am not permitted to create or manage VCN service. Same is true with any other service. If you click on storage and select bucket, I get the same or similar error message that says you do not have authorization to perform this request. So it means I do not have permission to do anything in this account right now. So I quickly switch back to the admin account. And now we will write a policy that allows network admin group to access VCN service. As a result, all the members of this group will have access to the VCN service. And if you remember, policies are written outside the identity domain. So if I click on the policies, we can quickly go ahead and create a policy. We will name it as network admin policy and for network admin group. For now, I will place the policy in production compartment. And in the later lessons, we will see where to attach or place the policies. You can use the policy builder if you are not too familiar with the syntax, and it makes it much easier to write a policy. Like for network access, select an use case as network management, then select template for network admin to manage a cloud network, then select your production domain and group network admin and scope the permission limited to the production compartment. The policy statement is ready, which allows production domain network admin group members to manage virtual cloud network family, which means creating, deleting or updating all networking resources in the production compartment. And if you want to edit or use the manual option, click on manual editor. And you can edit or add multiple statements. Now I will click create. And a policy statement will be created to allow access to the VCN service. So I switch back to the John Rose account here and quickly refresh the console. I go to the networking and select Virtual Cloud Network. Now the first thing you will notice here is I have access to the production compartment, which was not visible here. I select the production compartment and we see no error message now. But if you select root compartment, still you do not have permission, as we have set permission to manage VCN in production compartment only. So I will go ahead and create a VCN using VCN Wizard. And for now, I'll give the name demo and keep all default values and click create VCN. And you can see VCN got created as the user is allowed to perform the action. So to wrap up, it was a quick demo where we authorize network admin group to access VCN by writing a policy statement. And in the policy, we allowed them to manage all VCN resources and then scope it to the production compartment. In similar way, we can write more advanced policies for every service, and you can go even more granular. So hopefully with this demo, you got to know how authorization or permission management is done in OCI using policies. Thanks for your time. See you again. Welcome to this lesson on compartments. Compartments are one of the unique components within OCI that help us to organize and manage our resources. And it is also useful in implementing access control. So let us learn more about compartments in this lesson. When you create or open an OCI account, you get access to a tenancy. It is also called as root compartment. Consider it is like a main folder in your computer where you place all your files and documents. Similarly, in OCI, we have this root compartment that can hold all your cloud resources. Like now, in your computer, you go ahead and create subfolders so that you can organize all your files properly. Similarly, in this root compartment, you can go ahead and create more compartments. For example, you can create a network compartment that will hold all the networking related resources. Or you can also create storage compartment to hold storage related resources. So now you must have got it. Just like folders, these compartments are logical container where you can keep all your related resources. Like you can see in this example, we have kept virtual cloud network and load balancer in compartment network. And similarly, block storage or file storage in compartment storage. It is not always compulsory to keep all the related resources in the same compartment. You can create compartments for your project or for a specific region or whichever way you want to organize. Like we have seen in our previous demo scenarios that we have created two compartments like production and development so that all the resources related to the production team will be placed in the production compartment and similarly with development team. So with this logical container, we can have collection of all the related resources and along with that, we can isolate and implement access control. Now suppose someone want to keep all the resources in the root compartment without creating any subcompartment, they can do that. But it is a best practice to create dedicated compartment to isolate resources and properly manage them in your tenancy. Now going ahead, we will look at the features of the compartments so that we can utilize them in most efficient way. The first one is related to the resource compartment, where each resource belongs to a single compartment. That means a resource cannot be in the multiple compartments at the same time. For example, this virtual machine can be placed in compartment A but cannot be placed in compartment B simultaneously. So it is clear that every resource must belong to a specific compartment. Now the second one is about how we control access to the compartment or resources within that compartment. We have seen how we perform authorization for users to access resources, where we have a users belongs to a particular group, and then we write a policy statement. In that policy statement, we specify the tenancy or a particular compartment. That means they can have access to the resources but within that compartment only. Like you can see in this example, we will allow a group to manage block storage but only in the compartment A. Now we will look at how resources interact. Like for example, in this scenario, we want this virtual machine to interact with virtual cloud network to get VNIC associated. So do we need both the resources in the same compartment? The answer is no. The resources can be in the different compartment and still they can interact with each other. So with this, we can isolate all virtual cloud network in one particular compartment and all our virtual machines in the different compartment, and still they can interact with each other. And then there is also a feature of moving resources. As you can see in this example, we can move resource from one compartment to another compartment. Suppose initially we had our virtual machine in compartment A, but due to some reason, if we need to move it to compartment B, we can do that. Next, we can also have resources from multiple regions in the same compartment because our compartments are global. So when you create a compartment, suppose you create it in your home region, let's say Phoenix, then the same compartment will be available in another regions where your tenancy is subscribed to. So for example, if you create an instance in the Phoenix region and you go ahead and create an instance in the Aspen region, you can place both of them in the same compartment. That is compartment A in this example. This is possible because compartments are global concept. Then there is also a concept of nested compartments, where compartments can be nested up to 6 levels deep, allowing you to create complex and structured environment. So for example, you might have a compartment for your project and then a subcompartment for each team working on that particular project. And going ahead, you might even need to have subcompartment for different requirements of each team. So with the nested compartment, you can map this logical hierarchy with your project framework. And with the nested compartment, you can also define granular access control. Like when you attach a policy to a particular compartment, you are defining who can access, modify, or delete that particular policy. We will explore this in the policy attachment lesson in more detail. So to wrap up, we got to know about the compartments and this logical container that can hold all cloud related resources in OCI. And also you got to know about the features of compartments and how they help you to organize, isolate, and secure your resources in OCI. I hope you found this lesson useful. See you in the demo. Hello and welcome to this demo on compartments. We have seen in the theory lesson that a compartment holds all our cloud resources. In this demo, we will explore the process of creating compartments and assigning resources to them, and also how to filter and explore all the resources within compartments. Now, as you can see, I am on the console. And to manage compartments, we will first navigate to Main menu, select Identity and Security, and click on Compartments. Here you can see all available compartments in your tenancy. If I click on this first compartment, you can see that this is the root compartment. And the root compartment is automatically created when you set up a tenancy in OCI. It is the highest level of compartment and contains all other child compartments. And as we know, it is possible to have all the resources in the root compartment. But we should create dedicated child compartment for better management of resources. For example, as you can see, we have this production compartment for our production team to hold all their cloud resources. Similarly for development team, you can go ahead and create compartments as per your needs. And to create a compartment, click on Create Compartment. enter the name, sandbox, demo, and provide a short description. And then with this security zone, you can have secure compartment. So when you create or update any resources within your compartment, all your operations are validated and then only you have access to it. For now, we will skip this and go ahead and select the parent compartment. Here you select under which compartment this compartment should be created. Like if you select production compartment, then it will be created as a child compartment of a production compartment. And if you select root compartment, it will be a child compartment under root. For now, I will select root compartment and click on create compartment. Now if I refresh the page, you can see the compartment has been created and the parent compartment is root compartment. You can create a hierarchy of child compartments under it, and this hierarchy can go up to 6 level deep. Now that we have created our compartment, we will explore how to allocate our resources within this sandbox compartment. For example, I will create a VCN and place it in this compartment. For that, I will go to networking, click on virtual cloud networks, and then I will quickly create a VCN. Provide the name demo-01, and now we will select a compartment where we want to place this VCN. This ensures that we are doing proper resource mapping with compartment, and this mapping is 1-to-1, which means a resource can only exist within a single compartment at any given time. However, a compartment can hold multiple resources. In our case, we will select sandbox demo to place our VCN. Keep all other default values, click next, and then click on create. And now you can see our VCN got created. You can also use this particular scope or filter to view VCN resources in any compartment as per your access permission. But now if you want to explore all the resources in your compartment, you can use Tenancy Explorer. For that, you can go to main menu, navigate to governance and administration, and click on Tenancy Explorer under tenancy management. And here you can select your compartment to view all the resources within it. Suppose I select sandbox compartment, you can see the VCN we created and all the related components of the VCN. We can also check with root compartment and see all the resources under root. You can select show resources in subcompartment option to view the resources of child compartments as well. And we can see production and sandbox compartment resources got added. So to conclude, with this demo, we got to know how we can create compartments and assign resources to the compartments. And also we can explore all the resources of a compartment using Tenancy Explorer. I hope you found this demo useful. Thanks for your time. Welcome to this lesson on compartment quotas. In this lesson, we will explore how you can control resource consumption within compartments using quota policies. Let us consider a simple scenario where you want to control usage of high-value cloud resources in your tenancy. For example, you need to ensure that only 10 bare metal machine instances can be used across all 3 departments of your tenancy. And you want to add additional condition that your production team can use only 4 of them. So as an administrator, you can set compartment quota to limit or control resource consumption. By doing this, you have control over the amount of resources each compartment can consume. And to set this compartment quota to limit the resource consumption, we use quota policies. And here you can see the syntax for quota policy. We will take a simple example and then explore this policy syntax. Now suppose you want to set a quota policy where you want to allow only 4 virtual cloud networks to be created in your particular compartment. Let's say production compartment. So we start by using the action keyword set. After set keyword, we define the resource family or service family on which we want to set a quota limit. There are the keyword for each resource such as compute core, object storage or VCN and so on. You can refer the documentation to find service family name for each resource. For this example, I will select VCN and then we have this quota keyword and then we need to provide the quota name, which depends on the service family that you have selected previously. For VCN, we have VCN count or reserved public IP count. Now again you can refer to the documentation to get the service family and all related quota names so that you can set quota policy for any resources as per your needs. Coming back to the policy, I will select VCN count. Then we need to provide the quota count. Like in our example, we want to set it as 4. You can enter any numerical value like 10, 40, 50. For now, I will select 4. And then we need to define the location where you want this policy to be applied, in tenancy or in a particular compartment, by providing compartment name. Let's say I will set it for production compartment. Now you can see this complete quota policy that has limited number of VCNs to 4 in the production compartment. Similarly, we can write a policy for any other service. For example, look at this policy. This policy limits the use of expensive resource such as Exadata to 1 across the entire tenancy. And the next policy you see on the screen set the limit of 10 cores for VM Standard 2 and Bare Metal Standard 2 compute series in your entire tenancy. You can also scope it down to a particular compartment. In addition to the set statement, we have 2 more quota policy types available. Like we have seen, set action keyword is used for setting resource quota limit. Then we have this unset keyword. It is used to unset quota limits back to the default service limit. That is, it will reset quotas for a particular resource back to the default service limit of your tenancy. And then we have 0 keyword to set quota value to 0, which effectively removes access to the resource in the specified compartment. Let us take one example to understand how to use 0 and unset actions to manage compartment quotas. If you look at the first line of statement, you can see that Exadata resources are set to 0 for entire tenancy, and we are using the wildcard in the place of quota name. By doing this, all Exadata resources will be considered. And then our second statement effectively creates exception for production compartment, where we are using unset to reset the quota for Exadata resources back to the default service limit. That means it has allocated all Exadata resources to the production compartment. In this way, we can use set keyword for setting resource quota limit, unset keyword to reset quota back to the default service limit, and 0 keyword when you want to remove access to the cloud resource. Next, you can also set limits on OCI spending using budgets on any particular compartment. For example, if you have allocated $2,000 per month for your production compartment for infra spending, you can set a budget for your compartment and set a threshold value. Then you can track the actual spending and receive alerts if you reach the defined threshold percentage. In this way, we can control our spending in our tenancy. So to conclude, now we got to know about compartment quotas and budgets and how to use them for limiting resource consumption within your tenancy. By setting compartment quotas using set, unset and 0, you can ensure that your resources are used efficiently. And also by setting spending limit, you can keep your budget under control. Thanks for your time. See you again. Welcome to this demo on compartment quotas and budgets. Before we start, we will first try to understand the difference between service limits and compartment quotas. So if you refer the documentation, you can see the clear difference. The service limits are set or predefined by Oracle, and compartment quotas are set by the administrator of your tenancy, allowing to control resource consumption within your tenancy. Now, if you want to know the universal service limits for each resource, you can refer to the official documentation. But if you want to know the service limits specifically for your tenancy, you can go to console under tenancy management. You can check it in limits, quotas and usage. Here you can select the service name for which you want to view the limits. For example, I will select Virtual Cloud Network, and for our home region, you can see the service limit for number of VCNs is set to 300. And if you check for any other region, this service limit may vary because services have different limits for different regions. Now this is all about service limits. But if you want to limit resource usage or consumption, you can set up specific resource limits on any compartments using quota policies. These policies allow us to control the amount of resources a particular compartment can utilize. Here you can get the syntax for setting up quota policy for that particular resource. Now I will copy the syntax for VCN count, and then we go to quota policies and click on create quota policy. Provide a name. I will give it as quota policy for security sandbox compartment. Provide the description, and then we will write the policy statement. It is always a good practice to first zero down the service limit for a compartment using zero statement, and we have discussed this in the theory lesson. So the statement will be 0 VCN quotas in compartment security sandbox, and then we will set quotas using set statement. So here is the statement that we have copied, and we will change the quota count to 1 and compartment to security sandbox. So this policy will first remove all access to our VCN resource in security sandbox compartment, and then it will set and ensure that this compartment can have only maximum of one VCN resource. Click create quota policy, and quota policy is set for your compartment. Now we will verify the limit. For that, I will navigate to networking, click virtual cloud network, and then first I will ensure security sandbox compartment is selected and quickly create VCN using VCN wizard. I'll provide a name test01. Ensure the compartment is security sandbox. Keep all default values. Next, and click on create. You can see the VCN got created as we have set the limit to 1. Let's try to create another VCN in the same compartment and see if the quota limit is set or not. Again, I will provide the name test02, check the compartment and click create. And now you can see we got the error. Quota limit exceeded. Indicates that we can create only one VCN resource in security sandbox compartment. You can check with any other compartment which will allow you to create VCNs as per the service limit. But for security sandbox compartment, the limit is set to 1. So in this way, we can control resource consumption within compartments. Along with the quota policies, you can also set compartment budgets to further manage cost and monitor resource usage. Budgets help you to set soft limit on your OCI spending. And to set the budget for your compartment, you navigate to billing and cost management and click budgets under cost management. Click create budget, provide the name, security, sandbox, budget. I'll keep the same description. Select the target compartment as security sandbox and then provide the amount that you want to set for target compartment. For example, I will just set a budget of $100. Then you can set the budget alert rule by defining the threshold value. Here you can define a threshold for actual spending or you can provide percentage. Suppose I enter 80%, which means we will receive an alert when our spending reaches $80. You can also configure event rules so that you can receive alerts from notification service, or you can provide the email ID to receive budget alert messages. So in this way, using budgets, you can stay informed about your spendings. So to wrap up, this was a quick demo where we saw how to set compartment quotas to control resource usage within your tenancy or in a particular compartment, and how to use budgets to track and monitor your spendings. I hope you found this demo helpful. Thanks for your time. Welcome to this lesson on policy attachment and policy inheritance. We have seen how to write policies for authorizing users to access resources in OCI. In this particular lesson, we will understand policy attachment and inheritance and few important points you should know about while managing policies. So let's start with policy inheritance first. The principle of inheritance says that compartment inherit any policy from their parent compartment. And as you can see, we have this standard admin policy in the root compartment, which cannot be edited or deleted. And also if you notice that admin group here is not prefixed with the domain name, that indicate this policy belongs to default domain. So any user who belongs to administrator group in the default domain has permission to manage all resources in any of the compartment of the tenancy. Now suppose we have a parent compartment under the root compartment and a child compartment nested under the parent compartment. Due to inheritance, the admin group has the capability to create or delete resources in any of the compartment of this particular tenancy. So let's see how this works in the real life scenario. Consider that we have the root compartment and then we have three levels of compartment that are nested and named as A, B and C. Now suppose you wrote a policy for compartment A giving access for domain 1 network admin group to manage virtual cloud network family in compartment A. That means network admin can manage VCN in compartment A and also in compartment B and C because our access permission flows downstream due to inheritance. So that was a quick example to understand the policy inheritance, and you also got to know the reason why our admin group policy written for the tenancy or the root compartment can manage any resources in any of the compartment downstream from the root compartment. Now let's take a look at policy attachment. When you create a policy, you have to place that policy in a particular compartment. You can either attach it to a particular compartment or to a tenancy or root compartment. Where you attach a policy controls who can then modify or delete it. For example, here policy 1 is attached to the root compartment, policy 2 is attached to the parent compartment, and policy 3 is attached to the child compartment. So any user who has permission to manage policies in these compartments can update or delete these policies. That means if you attach it to a root compartment, we also refer to as tenancy, anyone with the permission to manage policies in the tenancy can update or delete it. And now suppose a particular user who has access to a child compartment cannot modify or delete the policy in the root compartment, but can only make changes or modify policy in that particular compartment. So now let's take an example where we have the same setup. We have the root compartment and then 3 levels of nesting A, B and C. Now if you want to create a policy to allow domain 1 network admin to manage VCNs in compartment C, do you always have to write this policy in compartment C? The answer is no. You can attach it to compartment C. It is very clean and easy to manage, and it is also a good practice to keep policies in that particular compartment. But note that any user who has permission to manage policies in this compartment C can update or delete this policy. You can also attach the same policy in compartment B. And because of the principle of inheritance, if you write it here, users of network admin group can still manage networks in compartment C because B is the parent compartment of C. But now only user who has permission to manage policies in compartment B can update or delete the policy, not the user who has permission for compartment C. And also you can write a policy and attach it to compartment A, and the same principle of inheritance applies. But now just look at the small difference. When you write a policy, you have to provide a complete path, as compartment A does not know that C exists because it can only see compartment B. In this case, we provide the complete path by saying something like the compartment name, child compartment name. The same logic applies if you write a policy in the root compartment. You have to provide a complete path here, so you have to write it as A:B:C as a complete path. By doing this, we are allowing the network admin group to manage VCN in compartment C only. But we are attaching it at different level to define who can control the policies. And few important points you should always take care while attaching policies are: first, based on the project, consider who the policy admins are and decide on the compartment where you want to attach policies. And if you need more policy admin, then restrict them to a particular compartment. This restriction allows them to create policies to manage resources, but they can only write policies within that compartment. So to wrap up, we got to know how policy inheritance works and how access permission flows downstream in the nested compartment. And then with the policy attachment, we got to know where to attach a policy and control who can access or manage it. So I hope you found this lesson useful. See you in the demo to know how this works in real life. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to the demo on policy inheritance and policy attachment. In this demo, we will explore how to set up policies in a tenancy and understand how they work in different compartments. We will keep it simple and easy to flow. Now we are on the console where I have logged in as a tenancy admin. You can see it here. And also I'll quickly show you the setup that I have done similar to what we have seen in the theory lesson. For that, I'll go to the compartments and you can see all the compartments in a tenancy. And this compartment with the tenancy name is the root compartment. And I have created a child compartment A. In A, you can see child compartment B, and in B, you can check child compartment C. The same setup what we have seen in the theory lesson. Moving ahead, first we will write a policy for the network admin group to manage virtual cloud networks in compartment C. For that, go to Policies and click Create Policy. Provide the name test-c and select the compartment where it will get attached, which is compartment C. And now we will use manual option to write policy. The policy will be allow group production network admin to manage virtual network family in compartment C. And the second one that I will add for same group is to manage policies in compartment C. This second policy I have added just to show you how users with permissions to manage policies can edit or delete them in a particular compartment. Now I click create and the policy is created and placed in compartment C. Now let's see how this policy works in action. We know we have user John Rose who is a part of production domain network admin group. I will switch to the window where I have already logged in as John Rose. Now go to networking, select VCN and we will check the access permission. First we will check for root compartment. See, we do not have access. Then I will select compartment C. No error message means I have access. I'll go ahead and quickly create VCN and check the access permission. The VCN is created means policy to manage VCN in compartment C is perfect. We have also given permission to manage policies to this user. So let us quickly verify that as well. Go to policies and select the compartment C. Now try to edit this policy and change the access permission to use instead of manage. Just to verify whether it allowed to change the policy or not. Click Save Changes and see that the user has access to edit the policy or even create or delete the policies in compartment C. Now I switch back to the admin console and delete this policy. And now I will try to write and attach the policy to compartment A. Click Create Policy, name it as test-AC and now select the compartment A. I'll copy paste the same policies we have written previously and now when I click create I get the error that states compartment C does not exist or it is not a part of subtree because compartment A cannot directly see compartment C in the hierarchy. Now we have two options. We can change the scope of the policy to compartment A and it will work. But due to the policy inheritance principle, users of network admin group will have access to manage VCN in all three compartments, that is A, B and C. But what if you want to limit permissions to compartment C only and attach it to compartment A? Then we need to provide full path like B:C in both the policy statement and then click create policy. We will see no error and the policy will be created and attached to compartment A, giving the same access permission for the network admin group to manage virtual cloud network in compartment C only, and same for managing policies. Now I switch back to John Rose account and refresh the page. There are no policies available in compartment C as they are deleted, and user will also not be able to access policies that are attached in compartment A, as we have not set any access permission for that. This is what admin has to decide on policies, where to attach them and accordingly who can access the policies. So in this demo we saw how to attach policies and control access by scoping permission to specific compartment. Admin can decide where to attach policies and who can access them, allowing for better policy management in a tenancy. Thanks for your time and happy learning. Welcome to the lesson on the conditional policies, where we will discuss what conditional policies look like. In one of our earlier lessons, we have seen how you can write policy and the syntax you should follow, where we allow subjects to conduct actions in placement. Placement is basically your compartment or tenancy, where you want to apply your policy. To create more advanced policy, you can include conditions using the where keyword. These conditions are evaluated as either true, false, or not applicable. Next, let us understand why you need to use conditions. The condition clause enable more complicated, advanced, and fine-grained access control. Broadly, a condition is evaluated as true, false, or not applicable. Now the real question is, how do you write conditional policies? You can use variables to add conditions to a policy. The name of the variable can be request or target followed by a period. Let us look at some examples. Request variable is used for attribute about the request itself. So for instance, say you want to allow a particular user with a specific user ID to make a request. You will use a syntax like request.user.id and provide the OCD of the user who need to be allowed. Let us look at another example. Suppose you want to give broad access with the manage verb to handle objects within your compartment. However, you want to narrow down this access to only include object inspect and object create permissions. In such case, you can use request.permission condition. Next, in the case of target, it is the resource being acted upon in the request and his attributes about the resource target of interest. For example, to limit access to a specific bucket in a particular compartment, add condition where target.bucket.name is equal to bucket name. It is as simple as request variable is used for attribute making the request and target variable for attribute about the target resource. Moving on, how do you write this condition? First thing you need to know is that we have single conditions and multiple conditions. Let us start with single condition. In single condition, you can use a variable that can be either equal to a value or not equal to a value. The equal or not equal operator return either true or false. Now let us move on to multiple condition. To handle multiple condition, we use two keywords, any and all. These keywords have specific meaning. When we use any, it means the condition within the curly braces are like logical or operation. In simple terms, if any of the subcondition within the curly braces evaluate to true, the overall condition is considered true. It is like saying if any of these conditions are true, then the whole condition is true. On the other hand, all is used when we want all the conditions in the curly braces to be true, acting like logical AND operation. In simple terms, it says that every single condition must be true for the whole condition to be true. Remember, any represent logical OR and all represent logical AND. Next, when it comes to the values in the condition, you have various options. Firstly, you can use string values. For example, you might have someone's email ID or their OCD. When working with the string, it is important to enclose values within a single quotation. It helps identify that it is a string value. Additionally, you can use pattern matching. This feature allows you to specify a pattern that matches certain string. For example, you can use pattern that start with the word HR and include any characters following it as a wildcard. This enables you to create more advanced conditions by using different types of string matching. Now let us look at some couple of examples to better understand how policy work in practice. Suppose you want to restrict users to a specific cloud region. Often you will encounter situation where you need to limit certain users to specific cloud regions. As your compartments are global and users can enroll to multiple regions. In such case, you can write a policy like this. If a user belongs to a Phoenix admin group, they can manage resources, but only if the request region is Phoenix. If a user tries to access resources outside the assigned region, the policy evaluation will result in false. This means they won't be able to manage or create resources in regions other than Phoenix. Second example, suppose you want to restrict access to a specific compartment. In this scenario, you want to allow a particular group to manage the virtual network family in your tenancy, but you need to restrict their access to a specific compartment. To achieve this, you can include a where clause with the condition target.compartment.id not equal to the OSID of the target compartment. By adding this condition, policy ensures that user in the network admin group can manage the virtual network family in the entire tenancy, except for the designated compartment. In the next example, you are allowing the group autonomous database admins to manage autonomous database where the target workload type can be OLTP, data warehouse, or autonomous JSON database. So to wrap up, I hope you got to know how to use the where clause for adding conditions to a policy. We will see a quick demo of the same to see how it works on console. I hope you found this lesson useful. See you in a demo. Welcome back to the demo on conditional policies. I am on the console logged in as tenancy admin. And as you know, admin have permissions to add policies at tenancy level. So now suppose we consider a use case where we want network admin group users should be able to manage virtual cloud network in the whole tenancy, except for a particular compartment. Let's say the production compartment. This group should not be able to manage virtual cloud network in this particular compartment. For that, we go to Identity and Security and click Policies, and we will write the policy in the root compartment as we are writing it for tenancy. So whenever you are giving access to a resource at tenancy level, the policy should be attached to the root compartment. Click Create Policy, name it as Demo Condition, and use manual option where we will add policy statement as allow group network admin to manage virtual cloud network in tenancy, but where compartment ID should not be equal to, and we will add specific compartment OSID. Let me get the production compartment OSID. Here is our production compartment. I copy the OSID and go back to the policy and add OSID. Click Create and the policy is created. Now I will open new window where I have already logged in as network admin user John Rose of the production domain. To verify the applied policy, I will go to networking and click virtual cloud network. First, I will verify it for root compartment. If I try to create VCN with all default values, see it got created. Now if I change the compartment to production, see we got the error authorization failed. That means user John Rose has access to manage VCN in the whole tenancy but not in this particular compartment, as we have added condition to the policy. So this was a simple example just to show you how condition works in policy. You can refer to the documentation and see different conditions that you can apply to limit access or go even more granular. Let me show you one example related to object storage. If you want your admins to have full control over object storage and buckets, you can add policies like this for admin user, giving full control over all the compartments of a tenancy. But if you want some user who belongs to object writer group to be able to create object, read and inspect only, then you can add conditions like limiting their request permission to create and inspect only. Don't worry about this permission. We will discuss this in more detail in our next advanced policy lesson. For now, just look at how we can add condition. Going even further, if you want them to perform action only on specific bucket, then you can add condition target.bucket.name and see we have this all keyword for multiple condition. So if both the condition are true, then only the user will get access. So this was a quick demo where we added a condition to limit access to a specific compartment. Remember, it gives you the ability to write advanced policies and go even more granular than what you can do with just normal policies. I hope you found this demo useful. Thanks for watching. Welcome to the lesson on advanced policies. In this lesson, we will see how to enforce the least privilege principle while writing policies. To understand policies or policy permissions in depth, we will first look at what permissions are. So permissions are nothing but atomic unit of authorization that controls a user ability to perform operations on resources. We have seen this in the authorization and permission management lesson, where we have seen that permission management in OCI is done using verbs like manage, inspect, use, or read. They simplify the process of granting multiple related permission that covers a broad set of access rights. And the way we wrote the policy, we use two main things. We use verb and then we use the resource type. And what OCI does in the background, it provides access to one or more predefined permission. So that's how policy works. It hides all the permission that you get when you use verbs. So that you do not need to go granular and know exactly what permission you need to assign. Now let us take an example of resource volume and see what permission you get when you define verb. When you use inspect volume, the permission that you get in the background is volume underscore inspect. And if you look at the API operation level, you get access to list volume and get volume operation. And if you notice, the permissions are always written in all caps, like volume underscore inspect, volume underscore update, or write. Similarly, when you move from inspect to read or use, you can see the permissions are getting added at each level. You get more permissions. For example, for use verb, you get permission like inspect, update, and write. And when you use the manage verb for resource volume, you have access to all permissions of that resource. For example, you can see it got added with create, delete, and move permissions as well. So now I hope you got to know what happens in the background when you use the verbs in the policy. They add certain permissions or operations for that particular resource. And now suppose you want to go more granular or beyond the predefined access, what you can do is that you can select individual permissions of that particular resource and write the advanced policies and enforce least privilege principle. Let's now see how this can be done using couple of examples. Look at policy A. It allows audit group to manage objects in compartment ACME. Here the manage verb will give all the permission, which means this policy is not enforcing any least privilege principle. So now what you can do that, you can rewrite this policy to limit manage permission. First, we will limit it to a specific bucket by giving target.bucket.name and the bucket name, so that audit group can only now deal with this specific bucket. You can also limit on permissions by giving only create permission, so that they cannot update or delete any bucket in this particular compartment. In this way, we have limited access to a specific bucket and to a specific permission. Now in our second example, we want the group XYZ to list, create, update, write, or move block volumes, but they should not be able to delete them. Here we use manage verb to provide all permission and then specify each permission that is allowed using condition request.permission. And as you can see, we have not added volume underscore delete. We can also rewrite this policy and use not equal to operator and specify volume underscore delete permission. That means they can perform all the operation except delete. We can also write policies with API operation condition, where we use request.operation instead of permission. And then provide the list of operation that we need to allow. If you look at one more example where we want object writer group can inspect or upload objects in any bucket in a particular compartment, then we can write a policy by limiting their permission to object create and object inspect. Going ahead, you can also limit it to a particular bucket in a particular compartment by using the condition target.bucket.name is equal to bucket name. So it has been limited to specific bucket and to the specific permission create and inspect. While writing conditional or advanced policies, you can go even beyond permissions and operations. Like if you want the contractor group to access or use instances only during specific time period, then the policy will look like this, where we can use time-based variables to limit the access granted in the policy to certain time frames. So in this way, you can go granular and limit the access permission. I hope you found this lesson useful. The whole idea is for you to write some advanced policies and implement least privilege principle while providing access permission. And we have seen that we can go even more granular beyond the predefined verb level permissions. Thanks for watching.